So it's my pleasure to introduce our final speaker of the evening, Molly Webb, who has been doing all sorts of extremely important things in this space for quite a while, and has written, I've been doing this PhD in this space, and I've sort of cited a lot of sort of quite seminal reports and things, which Molly's been very involved in. But right now, she's working on the beginning of a new project called Energy Unlocked, which I will let her introduce more. But it's about really getting Cleanweb and smart energy as a space rolling. So thank you very much, Molly.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone. The first Cleanweb meetup I went to was 3.5 years ago, and I was 9 months pregnant. And it was the last one I think I've come to since. I now have a 3 and a 1-year-old, but I love this group, and I'm so excited to see how big it is. So I'm really happy to be here. And I don't know do any of you work in energy now? Aside from Tom, who I know, but yeah, okay, good, few. Because I don't, it's the climate change topic, it's COP. There are so many things I could talk about, so I feel like I'm going to try and give you a few things and be as brief as I can so that we can have questions and discussion. My first COP was in 1997, and I'm dating myself. I was a student, I was at the end of my student years in Japan, and it was an inspiration for me to start working on climate change. It was not what I started working on. I went into the internet. I thought the internet, it was so exciting. And it was the first, it was like 1998, 99, so it was the boom. And I lived through the boom and bust. And then I decided that I was working on sort of scanning sort of B-grade films and porn movies onto the internet for my company's homepage. And I thought, maybe I should go back and look at that climate change thing again. So I did an environmental policy degree in London in 2003, and I've been here ever since working in climate change advocacy. What was really exciting is that I quickly got to rethink about the internet, the IT and telecommunications role in climate change. So from 2008 at the Climate Group, I've been working on the intersection of ICT and climate change. So I looked at everything to do with mainly quantifying the opportunity for big telcos, IT companies to look at products and services that would save emissions or reduce or increase energy efficiency. So I was looking at smart grids, smart buildings, smart intelligent logistics and motor systems, some really boring industrial things and some really exciting things. What I'm launching now is something called Energy Unlocked. It started out as a digital energy trade association. That's what I thought it would be, because I thought this space right now is so important that we should focus on it. In the climate change community, we should focus all of our efforts. I started this work, as I said, in 2008, so I didn't think as much progress was being made as I would have hoped. But now this tagline is about the sharing economy for energy. I think the main point that I will make, which might be slightly different from the previous speaker, and I didn't see the first speaker because I was on my way from another event, but this is really, I think, an economic problem at the moment. So I think there are technologies that we definitely do still need to develop, but this is mainly about the market building. So I wanted to give you that background, and do I have a clicker, or do I just press the space bar or something? That was a little more background. I have 3 kind of true or false statements that I want everyone to tell me what they think about. And there are no right or wrong answers, but the first one is, do you think that there's lots of innovation happening in energy now? Yes, no. See, good, everyone thinks, but there are a few energy companies and everyone thinks it's happening. This is great. This is the energy mix in Germany. I don't know if everyone saw the latest, there's been a YouTube video going around that I've recently seen, which is the CEO of the big transmission system operator in Germany and talking about renewables on the grid. Anyone seen it? No. Germany, this is not a great chart. It's not important the detail, but basically almost 30% of their energy comes from renewables now in Germany. And at any one time, they could have up to 70% wind and solar on the grid, which causes lots of problems. So innovation is needed right now, and it is happening, but not as much as you think. Here's Germany ahead of everyone, every country in deploying renewables. And they have done this essentially without any new innovation. They're doing what's called sweating assets, or working the system harder and learning a lot about how to manage it, and doing, sadly, more coal in the background. So even though you get increased renewables and innovation in that sense, you're not seeing, I don't believe, the demand side innovation, the storage, the things that Tom's company, Tempus Energy, does. Tempus Energy is the seed funder of Energy Unlocked in part, and I can tell you more about what they do in a minute. But you're not seeing as much innovation in terms of managing intermittent renewables as we need in order to bring down the cost of the system. If anyone saw the Economist climate change article and energy focus, so climate change special with an energy article in the last couple of days, I was really disheartened to see how the Economist is thinking about the economics of energy, and basically saying renewables are they're too cheap because we've subsidized them, and fossil fuels are more expensive, and they need to be more expensive because we need to have a lot of incentive to invest in generation technology. So it was this very strange backward argument, in my view, because I believe that the future, where the innovation has to start now in places like Germany and the UK and the US and Australia, where there are renewables coming onto the system, we have to start to make that a much more flexible process of generation matching demand. So that's something that we can talk about in a bit more detail in a minute. I'm giving it away. How many people think the private sector leads innovation, or the public sector leads innovation? Private sector? Yeah. Public sector? Some of the same people? So the theory is that the public sector drives innovation, and it's pretty true if you look at the history of it. And every major breakthrough comes with serious government support. And there's a lot of work that I'm looking at right now on tipping points and how governments drive these changes. Now, what's exciting to me, and why I'm doing Energy Unlocked, is that I actually think right now, because of the massive underinvestment in energy over the last at least 6 decades from governments and the companies that operate in the energy space, we don't see much at all happening now. Today, there is the breakthrough energy, what are they called? Breakthrough energy. It's Bill Gates and a lot of investors saying we're going to put private investment, billions of private investment into energy breakthroughs, because we want to see this whole sector change over the next 20 years. I think that's great. I'm really approving of that, but I think that today's innovators like Tempus Energy, I was just in an event with Open Energy and Forum for the Future. There are a lot of companies today that are doing really innovative, amazing things under today's market conditions, where they could do a lot more if in the next few years the conditions around them change to accommodate what they're doing. There's storage exploding, and you could end up getting some of these really exciting growth curves, like Airbnb, who we heard about with the previous speaker, or Uber. And that would drive, in turn, the policy framework, because we really do need, of course, governments to get behind this as well. So it's a really exciting time to support the new market entrants that are starting. And this is actually a curve. If anyone's heard of Carbon Tracker, they did a report a few weeks ago looking at the expectations from all of the major scenarios and how solar has broken those expectations with this growth curve. So this, sadly, is, not sadly, but it is to do with subsidies, and those subsidies are being rolled back. So I've just spoken with Solar City last week, who said they are expecting they're going to have their growth next year, even regardless of whether tax credits are pulled in the US, because they need to consolidate their business. They need to be more efficient. They don't want to just keep growing at basically 100% growth. So I think this could slow down if the uncertainty in places like the UK and other countries where the policy environment is very unhelpful for investors, this kind of curve could slow. And this is an exciting curve. It looks like the Airbnb curve, but actually nothing happens in the energy markets without regulation. So it's a very different space. So we really need to continue to push innovation in order to keep getting these kinds of numbers. So the final thing I wanted to ask everyone, who thinks that people are going to care enough about energy for us to actually see innovation in this space? Does anyone think people are going to start to care a lot? Oh, hey! Oh, and we have one of the innovators in this room. I've mentioned open energy, but I haven't mentioned open utilities. So I don't think they're necessarily going to care, but I think these new business models are really interesting because they are putting consumers first. And whether or not that's a big industrial consumer or an end user, that has to change. That has to be how we start to rethink the energy system. So on COP, I'm going to leave it. We're launching this new global organization, this new idea for basically saying that the energy system of the past is not the energy system of the future. We have some great speakers, and then we have to get to work and actually do market acceleration afterwards. So that's going to be the challenge after this big international launch. I feel like the time is really right. COP is a very, there's the biggest business participation in COP that I've ever seen, that most people have ever seen. There's huge confidence in a deal, and I think that's great. And what we have to do as NGOs, Energy Unlocked, and other advocates is really hold all of these companies feet to the fire and make sure that they deliver on their commitments afterwards. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm very happy to answer questions. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So what's your vision of Energy Unlocked going forward?
So Energy Unlocked will be, it's not a trade association. It's going to do essentially, it's going to do market acceleration activities. Right now, I envision those as challenge-led labs. So the first one we want to do would be in the UK next year. Can't announce it yet. Have to work on it. Probably around storage. And then we would like to do one in another country in the next year, at least one, and then look at how we would scale the model. So I very much learned from things like apps for democracy, or these models that are very franchisable, or they could be scalable to other places, because I don't think that we have the time for the kind of thing that I would want to do to be scaled if it were just our team trying to do it, or me right now trying to do it. There are people doing interesting innovation processes already, open innovation processes. I was just at the one Forum for the Future. We launched something called Living Grid with Open Energy. They're looking at how to grow flexibility in the UK. It's a very similar kind of idea. Let's do an open innovation kind of process that brings in policy, also brings in companies in order to focus on a specific goal. We're taking out one peaking power plant, and how you would do that over a period of a couple of years, it looks like their plan is. So you have Rocky Mountain Institute in the US doing acceleration around energy. They run team acceleration processes every year. They've done it for 3 years. So they've reached 20, 30 projects. So we want these kinds of activities, but I think we have to do them much faster. So the plan is to trial 1 or 2 or 3 next year in different geographies, and then to see how fast we can scale those. That makes sense? Sorry, there was someone else. Sorry, go ahead.
And the aim is to get the private business to innovate without the need for any public policy.
The aim is to take the fact, so having been a think tank, basically, the Climate Group, and working with other energy think tanks who are working explicitly on energy market design, they'll be right down the road from a company that's doing something really amazing, and they'll never have spoken. So the link between the new market entrants, much smaller companies, and what they're trying to do in the policy environment can be tenuous from an advocacy perspective. It's not always the case. You certainly have government funding small companies to do innovative projects, but it's not necessarily feeding back into, say, how do we redesign the energy markets to work better, to deliver the lowest cost, lowest carbon, most resilient energy future. And that's because those organizations often have, the government often is not captured, but the companies that already do this at scale have the stronger voice. So the idea is traditional sort of trade body kind of idea would be to bring those voices more strongly into the policy context. But I think what's exciting about that is that these companies, just by existing right now, not just because they've been given grant after grant after grant, they're actually starting to get customers, they're starting to have traction. That is proof that there is a different system that's possible, because otherwise you don't have those proof points. So from a policy perspective, it's also really useful to have those proof points if you're trying to advocate for leaps that seem scary to certain incumbents. So, yes?
So I find very, very stimulating the analogy between the web and all the innovations and changes in society that the web has created, and the energy space. So in the web space, regulators have been challenged from the beginning, and also in areas that we thought could not have been modified, like air traffic control and the airplane flight industry, or the hospitality, as we saw in
Yeah.
What is so specific of the regulation in the energy sector? Just understanding how it's changed it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to take, say, Airbnb as an example, what the web has done is allow, what has Airbnb done? It doesn't own its own assets. It creates value out of the efficiency that filling rooms in someone's home. It allows you to, access a city or a place that you visited in a different way than you could before. It potentially builds economic value in that way. So what they've done, the way they've grown so quickly, is to not have to have their own physical assets. So in energy, it's very difficult for anyone to imagine a scenario where anyone involved doesn't own the assets. And it's very regulated who does own them. And I think that's different. I mean, it's not, you could start Airbnb and you're running into problems later, but you can't even start in energy. You can't really, I feel like there might be some people in the room who want to comment on this, but it's very difficult. You can't necessarily raise that capital. You don't legally have the ability to build something and connect it to the grid. It's just not possible to begin with.
But if you take an example, a sort of more sophisticated example, like the airlines industry.
Yeah.
So when Ryanair, EasyJet, and others came, they really challenged the regulators on many, many fundamental points, from the security related to the check-in, the time we spent on tarmac. There were some really massive regulations as well as massive investments.
Yeah.
So sort of, how different is the energy world from such a capital intensive?
In that case, it could be similar. I think where I would see the most interesting innovation is in a place where the grid isn't there already. So you don't have the same constraints around who can build on it, who can connect to it, who can sell power to someone. And so I think maybe we overestimate how much the energy sector can or can't be disrupted. But it is true. I mean, at the moment, most of the companies that I see, and I don't know the details of all of them, they will have to either, say, have a contract with National Grid in order to sell the service of flexibility, or else, like Tempest Energy had to become an electricity supplier so it could directly use technology to reach customers and pass on the savings. And that is a huge investment that not everyone can make, especially if you don't understand the complexities of it. So I feel like even though I saw lots of simple ideas back in 2008, I feel like executing on those very simple ideas has taken many, many years for the innovators to get their heads around. So it's not that it's not possible, it just seems like it takes longer. And we're also, I guess, at the point where there were some early investments made pre-Nest, and lots of investors got burned. So there was like the 2011, 2012 investment that I saw, at least, in energy efficiency products and services, and you get O-Power, and you have a few companies coming out of that, but not, and I guess so now we're at the point where we have to build up investor confidence again. And then you have to bridge the gap between that and the hundreds of billions that companies have under management that they're investing in fossil fuel-based industries, and how do they shift those? So we're at this, I feel like we're at this very early stage, and you see the scale of the carbon challenge from the previous presentation, where we do need every single one of these small innovations, whether that's figuring out how to get rid of diesel backup generators in cities, or it's figuring out how to do, all the pieces of it have to come together in order for us to get to the scale of that challenge. So maybe energy isn't so different in the sense that in the hospitality industry, we're not measuring the huge challenge and saying, well, Airbnb is only this tiny part of it. Whereas we have all the climate models and we're saying, that's great, Open Utility or whoever that you're out there, but you are like in the UK, and the UK doesn't even register on that. And you're within the UK, you have access to less than 50,000 customers, and within, no one is doing that to Airbnb. They're just, so I don't know, it may be, you're right, and I hope in 3 or 4 years, I'm saying, God, I was so wrong. The energy regulations didn't matter as much as we thought. We've managed to see exponential growth in all of these different companies. I'm heartened when I speak to Solar City and they say, we are regularly deploying at twice the rate of renewables on the electricity grid directly to consumers, directly into homes, and we're building a grid team who's going to take that innovation to cities all over the world so that they can innovate, they can also deploy at this pace. And you think, okay, yeah, maybe we're going somewhere, but that's 1 or 2 companies, heavily backed by venture capital, patient investment, sort of, for quite a long time. And, I don't know, maybe there are lots of those around. That's kind of what we're saying by launching this. We're saying there are lots of those around, making them feel part of it. Anyway, stop. Now we have another question, but it looks like I'm going to be cut off.
One really quick one.
Right, we already heard you had a question, so.
I'm just really curious now, you say you were a student at the time of the 1970s in the Kyoto conference. What were you studying?
Japanese.
It's been a long way.
We're going to have to end it there. We do have a map to the pub, as well as a final announcement that we are